Okay, let's try some ganders at horror stories again. Hopefully, I don't sound like I'm whispering, which should not be the case, as I'm speaking as I will. Let's see. It happened about 6 years ago now. I'm in my late 40s now, and I think I'm still scared out of my mind thinking about it. It happened on my brother's farm in South Africa in a town called Mayaton. We were renting the old farmhouse from him. The house was about 100 years old. This I found out by the neighbors that have been living in the area for more than 50 years later on. When I and my son moved into the farmhouse, I felt that there was something not right. Whenever I am alone in the house, I felt scared. I could not explain this. I am very, very scared of the dark. If the light is off and I am in the room, it feels like something is crushing me and I cannot breathe. This is from my childhood, that I always slept with the nightlight. Yes, even now. I cannot explain why I'm scared of the dark. Some doctors said to me that something very bad happened to me when I was small. And this is some of the after effect. Well, I can't recall anything. Anyways, I had a small dog that slept on the corner of my bed. A few months that we have been living there, I started to feel like someone is watching me, especially when I'm getting undressed or dressed. Ooh, what a perv. In the morning or night, and this thing is glaring at me. So, let's see. I could feel the angry vibes towards me. So I started to dress in the bathroom and not in my room anymore. At night, when I am in bed, the dog stands on one corner of my bed and then starts growling at the corner of the room. And her back hair, you mean tail, is standing upright. This goes on for some time until I look straight at the corner where she is barking and demand whatever that is in the corner to go away. Then the dog stops growling and lay down and sleep. This goes on for some time, but the worst is still to come. One night, about midnight, something woke me, and as I looked over to the window, I saw the scariest evil face, and only a face coming through the curtains, and coming towards me. The next moment, I could feel something is pressing down on me and hold me down on the bed. I could not move or breathe for that matter. I was frozen. I do not know how long I was frozen in that state, but all I could think of was to pray to God, and I was thinking, God, please help me. And the next moment I was released and I could move. My dog jumped up and ran out of the house when this happened, and did not want to come back into the house. I was so scared and very, very cold. I asked my son to come and sleep with me in my bed with the lights on. I did not sleep alone in my room again. The next day, I told my mother what had happened, and everybody that came into the house said they did not feel anything wrong. Not long after this incident, I moved out of this house. There are other people living in this house now, and they reported nothing is out of place. I know what happened with me and was not a dream. It really happened, and I will not forget it. I will be reading three stories each video. Growing up, I was always interested in the paranormal. I loved reading ghost stories or watching movies on TV. But in reality, I knew I would be terrified if I ever experienced anything myself. I grew up in a small town in Illinois. I moved there when my mom and stepfather got married, and I have lived there ever since. When they got married, we moved into the house that my stepdad had purchased a few years back. It was an older home that was built in the earlier 40s. The interior of the home was outdated, and my mom and stepdad definitely knew it was time to do some renovations. They started updating the house in small portions. The area of the house was the basement. I'm sure you can guess that this is when things started to occur. The basement was split up into parts. The first part was the main area, and the second part was the laundry room. My parents decided that they were going to make the main part of the basement my playroom, because I had too many toys that needed their own space. In the lunchroom, there was a crawl space. It had a little wooden door that covered the opening. Now the crawl space was not low to the ground. It was higher up on the wall, with a few steps you had to walk up to get to it. So the door was at eye level. For some reason, my mom always kept that door open. There were no lights in the crawl space either, so it was rather creepy. A couple weeks after they had finished the basement, we were all eating dinner in the kitchen. Now the basement door is in the kitchen, and it is always open. We were having a conversation about school, like we always do, when all of a sudden we heard one of my toys go off. It was a little girl, you mean, that made noise whenever you walked by or touched it. We thought it was pretty odd, but brushed it off. The next night, it did the exact same thing, except this time it kept going off. When my stepdad finally stood up to go downstairs and turn it off, the doorbell on my Barbie dollhouse started to go off. He eventually went down there and took the batteries out of both. After that, I only went down there and played if I had friends over. Another occurrence in the basement happened in the laundry room. My mom had asked me to go grab the laundry out of the dryer. When I did, I was just about finished when all of a sudden, the door on the crawlspace started to close slowly. I remember it was always open, so I could see right into it. I don't think I've ever ran that fast up the stairs before. Needless to say, I spent as much time as possible in that basement. The next area of the home that my parents renovated was the kitchen. It was a Saturday night, and my parents were in the process of renovating the kitchen. They pretty much just started. They decided to let me stay home while they went to the hardware store to pick up some things for the renovation. So I decided to watch some TV in the living room while they were gone. My living room is right next to the kitchen, so it was very easy to see the kitchen from where I was sitting. About 20 minutes after they left, I heard two of the cabinets in the kitchen slam shut. I knew it was the cabinets because they made a very distinct noise if they were closed too hard. They were old, heavy wood cabinets, and my mom used to yell at me for slamming them all the time. My two dogs immediately ran into the kitchen and started barking. One of them was staring at the cabinet, while the other started barking towards the bottom of the basement stairs. I was so freaked out. I brought the dogs in my bedroom with me and locked the door. The next room to be redone was mine. My parents were just repainting the walls, adding new carpets, and putting shelves in the closet. Now by the time they had started redoing my room, my little brother was about 5 years old. My parents decided that they wanted to go out for the night, a couple days after they finished my room. So they asked me to babysit. I invited a friend over to help me babysit and see my new room. We had brought some toys in the room for my brother to play with, while we sat on the bed and talked. About an hour after my parents left, my brother stopped dead in his tracks and lifted up the bedskirt of my bed. He was sitting at the end of my bed on the floor, playing with his toys at the time. Once he lifted the bed skirt, he immediately started screaming. He jumped up and asked him what was wrong. He started to cry and said that the bad man was underneath my bed. We checked and there was no one there. We pretty much refused to come back into my room for the rest of the night, and my friend and I were pretty relieved to get out of there ourselves. Flash forward a couple of years, and now I'm a sophomore in high school. My parents had just finished putting a large addition onto the back of the house to add a third bedroom. They're quite the renovators. My brother's bedroom used to be the office area, which was pretty small, so they knew it was time to add on to the house. They didn't want to move because the housing market was awful at the time. My parents' old room became my new bedroom, and my brother got my old room. The addition is where my parents' new master suite was. Once again, my parents repainted their old room and replaced the carpet so that it was newer for me. They also repainted my brother's room as well. A couple months after moving into my new room, I was sleeping when all of a sudden my bulletin board hit me in the back of my head. Now, the bulletin board was pretty much superglued to the wall. There was no way it was coming off, because we had 10 heavy-duty glue strips on the back. The board itself was right above my tail dresser. My bed was right next to that dresser. As soon as it hit me, I knew what it was. I was so scared that I refused to move. I figured that I would deal with it the next morning. When I finally woke up, I was in total shock. My pictures on the board were scattered all over my bed, and the plaster from the wall was ripped completely off where the glue strips had been. I also realized that the board were to fall. If where the board should fall, it should have knocked all the perfume and picture frames off my dresser, except they were all right where they had been and nothing was moved. There was no way it could have fallen that far off the wall and hit me in the head. I lost some sleep for a few days after that. One of the last encounters was when I was a senior in high school. Every morning my parents had left for work about 6:30 a.m. It was very rare that they were late or stayed home from work. I usually woke up at 7:30 for school. One morning, I woke up a couple minutes before my alarm because I heard my mom blow drying her hair. I thought that was odd because I knew she should have left for work already. I got up and started walking towards the bathroom, which was the last area of the house to be renovated. I could hear the blow dryer on clear as day. As clear as day. As soon as I got into the bathroom, it stopped, and my mother was nowhere to be found. The blow dryer was still plugged in, which is odd because she always made sure everything was unplugged and put away before she was done. I checked the garbage and both parents were gone. It scared me so bad. I grabbed my stuff and went to my neighbor's to get ready. After I went away to college, I brought up some of my experiences to my mom. She said she was surprised it took me this long to bring it up because she had been experiencing some things as well. She told me that she used to see a little boy standing in the doorway of her room before my brother was born. She also said that she saw what looked like a tall man standing in my bedroom, which really freaked me out because my brother said he saw the man under my bed. We moved out of the house 6 months ago because my mom and stepdad got divorced. Now we live in a newly built home, so hopefully we don't experience any activity. I always wondered if maybe the spirits at the old house were upset that we were redoing their home and they were trying to stop us. Last one, The Whispering. Nice picture. This is a story I do not often tell. I promise sincerely that this has scared me for life, and although I have looked into psychological explanations for what I have heard, and natural explanations for what occurred, they remain unsatisfactory. When I was a child, I was scared of the dark. I swore to my mother that I heard voices in it. They were not evil, but they were not familiar, and so they scared me. It was not uncommon in the middle of the night for me to wake up and hear whispers, as I would call for them when asking my mom. She figured they were just bumps in the night, and typical kids' nightmare material. I tried often to explain to her that it was more than that they sounded different from one another the way people's voices do. On some nights, I would get so scared from these whispers, I would sleep in my mom's bed with her. It was an added bonus that the bedroom was directly outside of her bedroom door for my late-night tinkles. I should add at this point that when walking out into the hall to go to the bathroom, you look directly down the stairs that will lead you into my living room on the first floor, as my mom's bedroom was on the second floor. On one such night, around Christmas, I awoke and felt the need to relieve myself. I looked out from the door and distinctly heard the phrase, "Look," and to my astonishment, a red light, almost like a spotlight, was cast upon the wall at the very bottom of the stairs. The light had no other source, and it was by itself, and I was transfixed by it. Being a little kid, and it being only a few days from Christmas, I knew what this light was. It was Father Christmas. How else would he get into my house to know that I was being a good lad? I was so excited I began walking down the stairs to greet him, picking up my pace after the second step as it began to creep off the wall and fade into the darkness in my living room. That's when I heard him, a very strong, masculine voice, different from the first. Not at all like my father's. Not to say that he isn't masculine. It was just distinctly different. It said, "Stop. Right now. Go back up the stairs." I listened, turned around, and what happened next I am not sure. I would believe if someone had told me the same story. After reaching the top of the stairs, I heard a very loud crash that sent me running back to my mother's bed, where I jumped straight under the covers and stayed there all night. When we awoke the next morning, the poinsettia lights, little Christmas flower lights that glowed red, my mother had put on the railing down the stairs, were pulled straight down to the bottom of the stairs, some broken from what seemed like a forceful tear, laying in a single pile. The dry sink in my living room had fallen from the wall. My mother could not explain it. My father was worried we had been the victims of a home invasion. My sister was crying. There was nothing missing. Nobody had broken in. There did not seem to be any reason this had happened. Then I saw it, and I kept quiet about it because I was so afraid that I could not force words out of my mouth. There on the edge of the wooden dry sink, which had been facing up, were 3 indentations where the finish on the wood had been worn, almost as if in a forceful grip. Something down there had grabbed it and then threw it down. That's what the bang was. I was mortified. After that day, I never heard a single voice again. I do not like to imagine what it was waiting downstairs for me that night, if it was anything at all. But I can tell you that the reality was that something had psychically acted upon 2 things in my house near the bottom of that stairwell. After this, I had never heard another whisper again, which is sad because in some ways, I would have liked to thank the man, masculine energy, that had stopped me from going down those stairs. This happened to me when I was 7, or 7.5, as I like to say at the time. I'm 20 years old now, and because of this incident, I'm still afraid of the dark, especially shadowy stairwells.